I am horrified at this story, and I'm not seeing it reported hardly anywhere. And to me, it's a massive story. So, Duke Energy decided to implement some rolling blackouts, quote unquote, in Asheville, North Carolina. Now, it's not a secret that our infrastructure in America is pretty screwed, and we are watching system after system completely break down. Now, we really shouldn't be having issues with our electrical grids. We should have companies that actually put the money into fixing their infrastructure, but because of the system that we're living in, it's not profitable to fix something that's about to break. You're supposed to wait until it's actually broken and there's a real crisis. When we look at what happened on Southwest Airlines, we see how they had to ground their planes because their old, outdated systems just fell apart and they hadn't fixed them up to that point. So really, the real issue with our infrastructure is that these companies are so concerned with making money that they're not really concerned about causing serious crises in America. They're not concerned about who they might hurt when their infrastructure falls apart. Rolling blackouts are typically used when an electrical grid is about to fail, potentially because it is being used more than it is prepared to be used, specifically during inclement weather, when a lot of people might be using electricity to stay warm. We often see these rolling blackouts implemented. We saw them in Texas, and now in Asheville, North Carolina, Duke Energy decided to implement rolling blackouts during a really, really cold, freezing night that got close to 0-degree temperatures. Unfortunately, they decided to make the rolling blackout not roll. So residents living on Burton Street in Asheville, which is a historically black neighborhood, which has been targeted by politicians for complete demolition in some areas, that is relatively impoverished in this area. This particular community was targeted and their power was turned off. Now, for rolling blackouts, the concept is taking an hour or two away from each neighborhood so that you don't suffer too much, but it decreases the strain on the electrical grid. But if you decide to stop the rolling blackout in a particular neighborhood, it's no longer rolling, and it also is much more dangerous without having the electricity needed to weather these cold temperatures. So when residents from Burton Street called Duke Energy said, oh, they're just rolling blackouts. But they didn't hit everybody. They didn't hit everybody for just an hour or two. They hit Burton Street for the day. That is not how this is supposed to work. That is a targeted, dare I say, racist approach to lessening the impact of increased power usage on our power grid. And I'm not seeing a whole lot about this on any sort of media outlet, because when it happens to people who are disenfranchised, when it happens to people who are dealing with poverty, suddenly media doesn't seem to care. So most of Asheville was spared the misery of losing power when it is incredibly, incredibly cold outside. I didn't lose power, but at what cost? Duke Energy literally decided to black out the power in one specific area where people were struggling with poverty. So these houses might not even have the insulation that other houses might have. This is horrific, and this should be a national story because Duke Energy is a massive corporation and they made a very serious blunder that is targeted and, dare I say, even hateful.